Welcome to Command the Camera.
Welcome back to Command the Camera. I'm here with Kerry Barrett, an Emmy award-winning journalist turned trusted video authority for attorneys and law firms. She will share proven strategies to help you grow with confidence, build trust on screen, and turn your online presence into a powerful business tool. Let's raise your visibility and your credibility one video at a time. I'm Evan Mack, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We're walking through a homepage video from a law firm and breaking it down and what builds trust and what quietly weakens it. Even if you've never appeared on this show for a critique, this episode would help you listen differently to your own video. Let's break it down. Miss Kerry, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. So can you kind of describe the setup and first impression, background, posture, tone, pace, and explain how first impressions form within seconds?
Oh my gosh, they do. And you're looking at pretty much everything when at least I am, when I'm looking at a home site or a website video. Before there is even a single word that's spoken, a viewer's already started forming an opinion. And that opinion is based on what they see. So they see you, certainly, but they see the background, they see the framing, they see the posture of the person on the screen, they see the lighting, they see the visual quality. A homepage video is very often the very first time that a prospective client is going to encounter, let's say found you on social media, encounter the person or the human, if you will, behind the law firm. So that first impression, as we all know, they form in a microsecond. There is some research that says it forms in as little as 1/10 of a second, at least for visual judgments. Yeah, it's very, very quick. So I personally am looking first at the background. Is it intentional? Does it look like it's a professional background? We might think of a professional background for a lawyer as like a bookshelf with legal text rather, or legal books. We might think of it as an office with natural light, a clean, uncluttered sort of space. All of those say something. If it's a cluttered desk, if it's a fluorescent lit conference room, or like a random hallway, that will say something about the person and their planning and prep, right? That you generally don't want. Second is posture. So is the person sitting up? Are they leaning in slightly? Are they looking engaged? Are they slouched? Are they leaning back? Are they looking like they'd pretty much rather be anywhere else than where they are? Posture communicates the energy before your words do. And then the third thing that I'm usually looking for is framing. So is the camera at eye level? Are they centered in the frame? Is there appropriate headroom? Is the camera looking up their nose from a laptop on a desk, I should say. Those things sound very small, but they operate below a viewer's awareness. The viewer doesn't think, oh, that camera angle looks, unflattering. They think something about this person doesn't feel right, and they click away. I should mention there is a different bar for video on, let's say, a homepage or a website versus video on social media. Video on social media doesn't need to be as prepped and polished. It has a much shorter shelf life. The videos on your website have durability. They're going to be there for a long time, and therefore there needs to be more time and attention, more TLC that's given to them.
Can you break down clarity of message? Is it immediately clear who the firm helps and what they handle?
Yeah. So within, I would say the first, let's say we're looking at a video that's, I'm going to say 10 to 15 seconds here, and you're probably equating it with a social media video that's 30 or 60. But when we're looking at a video on a website or a homepage, they're usually somewhere between 90 and 30 seconds. So within the first 10 to 15 of these kinds of videos, the viewer needs to know two things. They need to know who the firm helps, and they need to know what they handle. And that is absolutely all they need to know in the beginning. So if I am a potential client and I land on your homepage, I have pretty much one question that I'm trying to answer. And that question is this for me? And if your welcome is, hello, this is Smith and Associates, or, some of the other things that we're a full service law firm, right? Committed to providing excellent legal representation or something along those lines. Everybody says that. You have told your viewer absolutely nothing. Right? I don't know if you can help me with my custody issue or my business dispute or my DUI. The strongest homepage videos that I have ever seen open with something that is, and we've touched on this in other episodes, that is very specific.
Hmm.
If you're a small business owner in Dallas and you're dealing with a contract dispute or a partnership disagreement, we built this firm to handle exactly that, right? And immediately that specific person knows that they are in the right place. And everybody else who is not that specific person knows to keep looking. So that clarity, right, that you're filtering these out and you're bringing these in, it can feel a little counterintuitive to an attorney because generally they
Right.
are accustomed to casting the net very wide, right? And they think that narrowing the message means that they're potentially losing out to, or they're losing potential clients, not losing out to them. But it is the opposite that is true. When somebody feels very specifically spoken to, their trust goes up immediately. When somebody hears a generic message, they feel like they're watching, it's a video version of a brochure, and
Oh.
nobody hires a brochure.
So what about the tone and delivery? Does it feel composed and reassuring or distant and overly formal?
Yeah, a trust building delivery on any website, but especially one on your homepage, is one that sounds composed and it sounds warm. So the person who is on camera and delivering needs to sound like they're talking to you, right? One person sitting across the table. Their pace is steady. There is a little natural variation in their tone. They sound like they're a real person having a real conversation. What undermines trust is when the delivery sounds overly formal or it sounds very stiff. And this
Hmm.
is very common in law firm videos because, again, you default to what feels safe, and that's something that's very formal. It's measured pacing. It's legalese. To put it nicer, it's elevated vocabulary. And you think that you're communicating authority. What the viewer actually experiences in those cases is distance, right? They feel like they're being talked at, not talked to. There is another thing that I listen for, and it's rehearsal. So if
Mm.
somebody has memorized, right, if you can tell somebody's rehearsed, you have to rehearse. But if I can tell you rehearsed,
Right.
that's not a good thing. So if somebody has a memorized script, um, if they have it word for word and they are delivering it from memory, you can usually hear that. What happens is the cadence gets a little too even. That's one of the first giveaways. Like it's very measured. There's no change in pacing. You might find that the emphasis lands in places that are like not totally natural. It doesn't sound terrible. It just sort of sounds like a presentation, is probably the best way to put it. And the presentation is not what somebody wants when they're looking for a person to trust with a serious problem. The very best homepage video, anyway, sounds like the attorney sat down, knew what they wanted to say, and then said it like a human being.
Can you kind of discuss the structure of that homepage?
Yeah. So structure in social media video is very important. Structure in a video on a homepage is everything because this video has one job, and it's to orient the
Mm.
viewer and then move them to the next step. The structure is: here's who we are, here's who we help, here's how we work, and here's what to do next. When a homepage video drifts, and I do see this a lot, the attorney, is trying, usually what happens is they're trying to pack in too much. They start with
Right.
an introduction, then they move to the background, then they mention 3 or 4 practice areas, then they talk about the firm's history, and then they sort of, at this point, circle back to why you should call. And somewhere in that, they're also trying to squeeze in client philosophy. And by the end, viewers know no idea what the single most important takeaway was supposed to be. So, a drifting message, like the one that I just described, communicates something that is usually unintentional. And that is that this attorney doesn't know how to prioritize. And for a client, prospective client, who's feeling overwhelmed by their legal situation, encountering a disorganized message coming across a disorganized video adds to the chaos. Got to keep it tight. 3 minutes or less, 2 minutes or less is even better. One clear through line. This homepage video is an introduction. It is not a comprehensive overview of the entire firm.
So what about, the eye contact and the connection? Can you break that down?
Yeah, good eye contact on camera means you're looking right into the lens, right? You're consistently enough that the viewer feels like you're talking to them. On a homepage video, specifically, this matters, I would say, more than any other type of video, because that homepage video is meant to stimulate face-to-face introduction, in-person communication. So the most common mistake that I see is attorneys looking at their own image on the screen instead of looking at the camera lens. When you're looking at the screen, your eye line drops, and to the viewer, it looks like you're looking past them, and it breaks that feeling of direct, connection. Now, the second common mistake that I usually see is reading. If there is a teleprompter or a script that's taped next to the camera, viewer can 9 times out of 10 tell, right? Because their eyes are moving in kind of a weird way. They're not settled. That reads as discomfort, or it reads as distraction. And neither of those things build trust. So what you want is a steady, comfortable gaze into the lens with natural breaks, rather. So like, you're never staring into the lens like you're having a staring contest and like who's going to blink first and you look away. It's perfectly fine. I do it all the time. If you're watching this on video, you will have seen me do it. I break gaze from the camera lens because that is how you have natural in-person communication. You just don't want to break too long. Remember that the camera is your audience's eye, and the microphone, for that matter, is your audience's ear. But you're meeting them in the eye by looking into the camera lens.
Can you also break down, the language choices of the person?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the most important distinctions in any law firm video is one that a lot of firms get backwards. So like a self-focused video, a firm-focused video says something along the lines of, we've got 30 years of experience, we're dedicated to the best outcomes, blah, 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 blah. Every sentence starts with we or our. Every claim is about the firm. The prospective client's experience is nowhere in the message at all, right? A client-focused video sounds something like, when you're going through a divorce, you need an attorney who will answer your calls, who will explain your options, who will protect what matters most. Every sentence in that example starts with the viewer's experience. Every claim is about what the client will get, not what the firm believes about itself. The difference, right, and it may sound this way, it seems subtle, but in practice, it totally changes how the viewer feels about you. And that feeling of being understood, is the biggest grower of trust on a homepage video.
Can you discuss, the visual authority cues, framing, lighting, that wardrobe you discussed in earlier episodes, and kind of how they impact subconscious trust?
Yeah, they do impact quite a bit. So, we're talking about somebody who's beyond the stages of being comfortable on camera here. Because when I first tell people as they're practicing, don't worry about any of that stuff, but you're creating a video, again, that has some durability here and that will be judged fairly quickly. So people will tell you that content is king. And yes, 100%. We've talked about that. You can't ramble. You got to make sense, like all those things. Yes, the content matters. But visual authority cues operate below, they work below that conscious processing, and they happen very, very quickly, right? They set what you might describe as a baseline for how credible the viewer finds you before they even listen to what it is you're saying. So lighting is the biggest one. You want good lighting. That means it's clean. It's not competing temperatures, dark and or warm and cool. It is even. It is flattering. Bad lighting, things like overhead fluorescent lights, a dark room, a window behind you that's blowing out the exposure, right? All of that says this video that I'm doing here was an afterthought. When the video on your homepage looks like an afterthought, the viewer wonders what else at your firm is an afterthought, right? So the framing, which is the second component here, matters as well. If you are too far from the camera, you feel small, you feel distant. If you're too close, it feels uncomfortably intimate. You want to like bridge the gap between those two things. So the sweet spot here is roughly chest up at eye level with a little bit of headroom. So generally like 2 to 3 fingers from the top of your head to the bottom of the monitor above you, right? That's a good guideline. If you think about how you see, if you watch local news, I use, as you may know, a lot of news analogies because that's my background. If you watch local news and you think about how you see a single anchor framed when they start a show, like framed where they're positioned in the lens, it's close because that allows, it's close without being uncomfortably intimate because that allows the viewer to look into the anchor's eyes and establish rapport. That's why this particular thing is important. Wardrobe is straightforward. You would dress the way that you would dress if you were sitting across the table from a potential client. So for a lot of attorneys, that's a professional dress. The mistake that I see is going either too casual, which undercuts your authority, or going too formal and too stiff. That creates distance. You want to meet your audience where they are and slightly elevate, right? So if your audience is watching you on the weekend and you're creating a video for a weekend, maybe you are in just a button-up shirt or a polo or something along those lines. But if you are doing a professional video for your website, you are wearing whatever it is that you would wear when you're seated across the table from somebody and doing a client call.
But how can you evaluate whether a video, lowers anxiety by explaining next steps or maybe leaves uncertainty?
There's a couple of reasons here. So one of the reasons that a video can either lower or one of the main reasons the video can lower or increase anxiety is that think about the mindset of the person who's watching your video. So the person who's watching your video is anxious, right? We've talked about this before. They're dealing with a legal issue that they probably, don't fully understand. It's probably going to be expensive, right? They don't know. One of the biggest sources of anxiety is something that you is future based, right? I'm worried about what's going to happen. And it's the opposite of regret. And so when somebody is watching your video and they're feeling anxiety about what's going to happen and your video doesn't explain what's going to happen, right? That anxiety increases. It's not knowing what to expect, right? If I call this firm, what happens? Am I going to talk to a receptionist? Will I get a call back? Will I have to explain this entire thing over the phone to a stranger? How much is this going to cost me, up front? If your homepage video doesn't address any of that, you are leaving the viewer with that uncertainty. You're not answering any of it. Uncertain, confused buyers do not buy. So 1 or 2 sentences makes a massive difference. If you start, or if you have in that video, when you call, you are going to speak directly with me. We'll spend 15 minutes talking over the situation. By the end of the call, you will know exactly where you stand and what your options are, or whatever it is that you want to say. That sentence lowers what the viewer sees as risk in taking the next step. So it tells the viewer exactly what's going to happen, what they can expect. It removes any feeling of uncertainty or ambiguity, and it makes what they need to do feel manageable, which is key.
Amazing. So can you summarize what adjustments would immediately elevate credibility without, redoing the entire thing?
Yeah, so there's 3 things really that I would suggest. So the first is check your opening. If the first 10 seconds don't tell the viewer, what it needs to, right? Who you help, and what you do and what you handle, re-record the opening. You don't need to redo the entire video. Just give them a sharper, more specific, like 10, 15 seconds. Second thing to do is to check your eye line. If you're looking somewhere else, right, that is the single fastest trust fix that you can make. Sometimes people will tape a little sticker or some eyes next to their camera lens as a reminder that that's where they need to look. And then the third is to check your close. So does the video end by telling the viewer specifically what they need to do next? And then part B of that is, does it lower the barrier for them to actually do it? If your close is, feel free to call us, which is like sort of standard, what I see all the time. Replace it with something that's concrete. Click the button below to schedule, whatever your consult is, a free 15-minute consultation. You'll speak with me. Those three adjustments. So having a specific opening, direct eye line, and a clear close rather will change dramatically how much trust your homepage video builds. And I should mention, none of them require that you need to have a bigger budget or fancier equipment or any of that good stuff.
Amazing. Ms. Kerry, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. A homepage video is often the first real introduction someone has to your firm. Small adjustments in clarity, structure, and tone can dramatically strengthen the trust it builds. Connect with Ms. Kerry on LinkedIn and book a Command the Camera Clarity call. You can find the link in her headline. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if today's breakdown helped you think more strategically about your video presence. Until next time, keep showing up and let your credibility speak for itself.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.